we got people coming in. Awesome. I'm just going to make a start. We got Leica in. Awesome. I'm just going to make a start. I'm recording this as well so that anybody can watch this at a later date. So I'm just going to get on with it. And today we're going to be talking about leash walking and leash pulling. Put a bit of a request out last week to get some topics to talk about, and that was the one that we just kept on getting repetitive requests. So yeah, here we go. This is the first time I've been live as well in over a year, so a bit rusty. Let's see how we go. The reason why I really wanted to talk about this is because, to be honest, leash walking and leash pulling are two of the most really misunderstood topics. Even for the reasons why we go leash walking with our dogs is completely different to what the dog had in mind. The reasons why the dog's pulling as well, really, really misunderstood. I think like the two main reasons why people will go, take their dog out the house besides just wanting to get away from their family, is to go take the dog for exercise and to take them out to get socialized. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail in both topics, because exercise isn't something a dog ever tried to do. It's not on the dog's agenda. They're not trying to lose weight. They're not trying to maintain their fitness or burn off calories. So that's not something that's even a thought process that's going through your dog's head when they're at the house. There's also consequences to taking your dog out for it to be exercised that I think fly under the radar and actually create more problems than they solve sometimes. The notion that if you take your dog out the house to get them tired, to create a well-behaved dog in the house is fundamentally flawed. If you've got issues in the home, address them. Actually, if you've got hyperarousal in the home, teach the dog how to relax. Whereas we see a lot of people take the dog out the house to run them around, keep them in a really heightened state of arousal for them to then crash when they get home. And that might work as a short-term fix, but ultimately what you can see is these massive fluctuations of the dog's adrenaline from high to low every day. And you're going to create adrenal fatigue. You're going to then affect their sleep patterns. You're going to see the mood shift and change according to what that looks like, these massive fluctuations, these unpredictable natures. We have to end up teaching the dog to be hyper more. And that's like, if you want your dog to relax, teach it how to relax. Sorry, fuck off. Getting a call. Bad timing to get a phone call. If you want your dog to learn how to relax, then teach it how to relax. It's like sending your kids to school. If you want them to get good at maths, teach them maths. Don't ask them to run around the playground and then wonder why they can't pass maths. You end up creating an athlete you can't keep up with, because in 6 months' time you've got a dog that still can't settle down, but now you've got to run him every day as well. So it becomes harder work. So, and finally on that topic, trying to get a dog tired is a shit goal. Don't have it. Tired dogs are the same as tired people. Their mood and their behavior is going to reflect exactly that. So don't have it as an agenda to try and tire your dog out. The other thing is, we're going to go into a lot of detail, well, not a lot of detail because it's live, but as much as I can, is socializing. Taking your dog out to socialize. Again, not on the dog's radar as a thing to do. Socializing is something that happens to the dog. It's a process. He's not out there thinking, I miss my buddies, I'm going to go down the pub and have a beer with them, or to the park and have a play with them. As he's walking down the street, he encounters a bunch of strangers and acquaintances that are coming into his space, and you're seeing him respond to that. And that's something to really remember. And I think a lot of people get confused on the terms of like socializing their dog, because I've met thousands of dog owners now, and I've never met one that doesn't understand that socializing is important. I honestly don't think I've met many that know what it is. If you actually ask them to name it, they'd really struggle. And I think there's a few definitions of socializing that are all relevant and all really important, but for the general public it can be a little bit confusing. So when we're out socializing our dogs, I think the emphasis should be like on building the tolerance of others in their space. If somebody else comes into their space and your dog shows a reaction with in any way, shape, or form, whether it's a nervous reaction, a hyper reaction, but one that's out of the frame of what we might call normal, then he's communicating to the other dog or whatever that individual is, and us, if he has feedback for us to acknowledge that our dog is actually being impacted by this individual coming into their space, and we need to make it better for our dogs. We've also got another definition of it is building socially appropriate responses to others' communication patterns. So not just being there, but actually like learning how to communicate with them. And on that, I think dog body language gets misinterpreted a lot and misunderstood. When we're out walking, I think the biggest thing we see a lot is people mistaking, what's the word I'm looking for, hyper-arousal for happiness. They see the dog moving really fast and they assume that the dog should like walks. So automatically assume that this is a happy response because it's big exaggerated movements and bouncing and panting and it looks really animated. But what you're seeing is a physical response to the amount of adrenaline going through your dog's system. So is it, and then you have to ask yourself, is it actually normal? And I don't mean normal as in like you see it all the time, so we just normalize the shit out of it. I mean like if it was a person, would you ask yourself, is he a bit fucking weird? Because going a bit loopy and excitable just because somebody's coming into your space is something we see dogs do all the time. But I look at that and go, that's not a socially normal response to having somebody in your personal space. But it gets labeled as, oh, he's just being friendly or he's just excited. He's not just anything, he's just having an adrenaline hit that's making his body do all this crazy stuff. So it's at that point we want people to actually acknowledge, right, that's not, he might have all the best intention in the world, but he's actually having a massive physical reaction to that. So let's try and help him in that moment. When the dog's pulling on the lead, I think we put things into our head as, oh, he just wants, and he just wants this, he just wants that. We're going to look at it, if we break that down and try and simplify it a bit, you're looking at 3 fundamental reasons why a dog is pulling on the lead. It's been affected by its environment, right? Ultimately, something in its environment has affected it. And you are now looking at a dog that if he's pulling, he's either being so stimulated, he's become hyper-aroused and he's lacking direction, but he's just moving for the sake of moving. So again, if that was a crazy person, it's like a crazy person running around the street, just no idea where they're going, shouting shit into the air. We normalize that with dogs. Oh, he's excited with a person, you look after them. It might be impacted to the point where it's just curiosity. So yeah, he sees that dog across the road and he's curious and wants to go towards it. He's friendly again, like gets banded around in that situation. Is it normal? Did you feel the need to cross the road and go into an individual space who you don't know? No, it's again, curiosity is kind of normal, but it has to fall into that bracket of like, is it that normal? And finally, you got flight. Something might happen in his environment that actually makes him so scared that he runs away. And that change in his environment will affect his nervous center, which changes his behavior, which then results in an increase in pace, and then consequently there's leash pulling. Pulling on the lead for any one of those reasons, a tight leash, like it being physically tight, whether it's through a collar, whether it's through a harness, doesn't matter. Your dog physically is going to end up 3-4 feet away from you. It's not the end of the world, but mentally it's damaging. You've got a dog that if he's just disorientated and doesn't know where he's going, he's going to feel really restricted. He's going to get really frustrated that leash is on him and can't vent the way he's feeling. If you've got the same deal for curiosity, he wants to be over there where he's seen the individual that he wants to go towards or item that he wants to go towards, and he's now being held back physically. And the same for flight. Flight, if the dog's trying to flight and can't because the lead has got tight, you've trapped your dog where he's trying to run away from. So look, we'll look at it like, yeah, sure, he's only 3 feet away from me, I'm still in control, but mentally he is no longer with you. Mentally he's left where you are and he's trying to be somewhere else. So he's left you as an individual as well, if you're the one walking him. So mentally, pretty damaging. And so as soon as we see the dog, side note, the more physical control, don't care if he's right next to you, if mentally he's not with you, physically, the more control you're in. If you have to take lots and lots of physical control, the less control you're actually in. We want to encourage people to have that verbal relationship with their dog, where they're checking in and the dog's actually coherently choosing to check in with them back. So as soon as we see that leash pulling, that's information for us as when we're walking, for us to acknowledge, we should be acknowledging, all right, the dog is no longer mentally with us, and I need to do something about that, and I need to address that. It's a busy world out there. I think at this point, I'm just going to remind everybody, we work with pet dogs in urban environments. All right, so this is information for people that live in a city or a busy town where there's a lot going on the streets. Things that we don't normally probably consider. We normalize a lot. We're desensitized to the buses, the people, the possums, the bicycles, the runners. We're all normalize this shit out of that. But for a dog, it's a crazy world. It's way too stimulating for them, and we mislabel that as excitement far too often, in my opinion. Footpaths are horrific inventions for dogs. We normalize the hell out of that. Just walking down the footpath, and as I'm walking towards somebody, if somebody's walking towards me, I don't think this, but I know that good job you're walking on the footpath, mate, because the road is where you get run over. Alien concept to a dog. For a dog, it's rude and confrontational to walk head on towards. So you're walking your dog down the street and you see a person or a dog coming towards them, and your dog's going, there's all that room over there. Why are you walking straight at me? And that you start to see the dog, go into that physiological response of, all right, this is actually happening. And you've got the physical pace that we talked about that results in leash pulling, but then you've got all the more subtle details that your dog's giving off. You've got the lip licking, you've got the avoidant sniffing, you've got just basically the dog in that moment going, well, shit, something's in my space, I'm going to have to react to that. And this is that moment, whether your dog actively pulls on the leash towards it or might just stop or put his nose down, he's communicating, I've noticed that and I'm trying to cope. And that, as dog owners, is our time to step in. The way we do it as well, we want to make sure that we are making a positive association. We don't really want them to, there's certain things in life that we want them to just get used to, but first of all we start doing that by pairing it with something positive. And that's why we tell people to take food out with them on the walks. We don't want them to just suck it up and suffer it, because getting used to it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be positive. If that person walks past 5 times and the first 5 times you found it really stressful, but we never really did anything about it, that's why after the 6th time he might explode. And people around go, oh, he just came out of nowhere. He's walked past people 5 times before. The 5 times previous weren't positive experiences for him. They were just ones that he was tolerating, potentially. So remember, with your food, when you're out walking, it's not just to create good behavior. It's to create positive associations of the stimulus that he's exposed to while he's out on the walk. And it's not bribery, it's payment. Pay it what it was worth. And food for a dog is one of the few reasons why they would leave the house. If you think about it, they've got company and their family at home, they get fed at home, they've got everything they need. To go out the house, they're just going to go and have to tolerate a really, really busy city environment. Take some food, make sure that they really enjoy it. Don't assume that just because you're out of the house and been given all this exposure to the world, that they're going to love it. So a lot of dogs really struggle with that. If you think about it, it's like I said, it's so many things that we have normalized but don't necessarily think about from the dog's perspective. But these are all alien stimuli to the dog, and overexposure to them and too much. There's too much exposure, and flooding them can be really detrimental. Everything you read as well, you read conflicting arguments. One of them is it's about giving the dog all the control, which in theory is lovely. Giving your dog control is a lovely theory but it's got to be within the realm of what your dog can cope with. At the end of the day, as a dog owner, you've got to guide them and make decisions for them and expose them to an environment that they can succeed in. Because if you're taking your dog out on a leash walk I live at Bondi Beach, And if I go down to the promenade, that is crazy for a dog. It's movement everywhere, so many moving variable parts. And if I take a dog down there that's not ready for that, it's like asking you to fly a helicopter without having any lessons. You're going to start to freak out, you're going to start to panic, and you might, if you actually took off and did it, you'd probably crash and die. It's not bloody good. So you've got to set them up for success. And it comes back, your individual dog has to be considered. Some dogs, I've got two at home, Otis and Django, both awesome dogs, but two brains that operate completely differently. Little Django, take him out to the world, he just sees things, and he stays in a really low state of arousal. He just sees the world and goes, yeah, all right, that happened, I'm just going to carry on with my day, thanks so very much. He needs really little training. He's nowhere near as well trained as Otis, my other dog. Otis is trained because I have to communicate with him so much more than Django. Django gets exposed to the same information as, Otis gets exposed to the same information as Django, and Otis's arousal level spikes super fast. Slightest bit of movement, bang, he's got another adrenaline hit. Another thing moves, another adrenaline hit. He then, really, really quickly, just spirals. His behavior just spirals, and like what would be called bad behavior by so many, I just look at it and go, this is a dog that isn't coping well with the environment that he's exposed to. And that's why training methods are so important. If you look at that and realize that he's not trying to dominate you to walk in front, that's a load of crap. He is reacting to the stimulus environment in his environment and not coping very well, then you move away from a correction method into a, mate, I've got to help you out. And if it happens to be inconvenient to you because you took your dog somewhere where you wanted him to behave differently, don't blame the dog. That's not fair on him. And learn from that, and don't keep putting him in that situation and correcting him and exposing him to it just to get corrected again. That's not dog training, that's dog bullying. So help him and use the food. Remember, he's not making that decision on a moral basis. So using food in that moment, you're trying to motivate him to concentrate on you. If you can't take the food, then he really is having that much of a physical response that he's saying, I can't eat right now. I love burgers. And I'll eat a burger 99.9% of the time to put in front of me. But if there's a tiger over there that I'm genuinely scared of, I'm not going to eat a burger. So bearing that in mind, help your dog. If your dog is pulling on the lead, don't correct him, help him. You can stop walking, take your time, give him some food, rescue his brain. And while you're traveling around anyway, so these are some of the things that we can actually do to help our dogs. It's like, communicate with them from the start. Right from the off, go, right, okay, mate, can you hear me? Can you process? Can you complete the basic behavior? So pull out a motivator like some food. Introduce like a life reward by putting your hand on the door handle or picking up the leash and going, hey, can you sit down, buddy? And if not, you're ready to carry on with the walk. If you're walking down the street and you go, hey mate, can you hear me? Like say his name, click, whistle, do something to gain his attention, and he just keeps trucking, he's gone. So stop, don't keep walking. There's three really clear things that you can do look for when you're out walking your dog as gauges as to whether or not your dog is having a good time or not. The first one is physical pace. Is his physical pace your physical pace? We're naturally slower than dogs. And so if he is choosing to move at your pace, then he's engaged with you. If not, mentally he's gone. So we want to rescue it and come back. You got the direction, a really calm brain is going to be walking in a pretty consistent direction. If it's erratic and all over the place, you're probably looking at an erratic and all over the place brain. So again, rescue it. And is he coherent? Like I said, if you say his name and he can't turn his head around, or he can't give you an eye glance, or he can't take the food, these are indicators that our dogs are no longer in a frame of mind that is what we actually set out to do in the first place. If we want our dogs to be social, then we've got to keep our dogs in a frame of mind that involves them being able to read others appropriately, to not be overstimulated. Keep your dogs out of other dogs' space when they're on the leash as well. It's really weird to just go up to others and just let them go into other space. I don't go up to people giving free hugs. I will use context. I will go and do that to my friends. But 99.9% of the people I see out there are strangers and acquaintances. So yeah, be normal. I'm just going to take a quick look at my notes before I wrap it up because I can't believe how fast time's gone already. But yeah, here's a summary. Five things to actually consider when you are walking your dog. So we've already talked about looking at their body language, the speed, direction, and whether they're coherent. Remember that they are responding to stimulus in their environment, and help them, don't correct them. And I said 5. Don't resort to punishment. I'm going to try and stretch out 5 now. And I think a big help that you can do for your dogs is don't walk with an agenda on where to go. That can set your dog up to fail. You know, you get it in your head, I've got to get to the park and back, whereas your dog started freaking out halfway to the park. But you're like, no, he needs to run and get to the park and drain the energy. You'll end up taking him to the park in a frame of mind that's freaked out. He's no longer going to have a positive experience at the park, and he's going to practice leash pulling. So don't have an agenda. Like, when you're out there, get engaged with him. Like, communicate with him. Like, it should be about you and the dog, and then you give him back to the world when he's ready. If he sees something and looks at you, and you can go, yeah, some food, you can have an analysis of like what that is. You can make a decision, go, no, walk with me like any normal sane person, or yeah, it's your buddy, go and say hello. But you get to make that decision for your dog, rather than your dog just pinging off in every single direction. It's gonna make sure that your dog is received well by others, and it's gonna make your dog, your relationship with your dog so much easier. I'm gonna shut up now. I'm gonna give you all a little bit of time to actually ask some questions. Type them in if you want. I'm just going to stay online for another 30 seconds. Sent a request to be in your video. We've got Home Vet Bondi. I just don't understand Instagram, so I'm just taking a second to read this. Got Home Vet Bondi requesting to zoom in. So here we go. Coming in live. We've got a vet joining us. Hopefully. Phil, can you teach an old dog new tricks? 2-year-old that hasn't had much training? Yeah, of course you can, mate. You just got to go at their pace. You know, if you're an older guy that's trying to learn a new thing, you don't expect the same learning curve as potentially somebody that's really malleable when they're young. If you just set them up to succeed. I think I tried to accept that invite, and I think I ballsed it up. Standard. I'll try and get that right. Hold on. That. Here we go. Is that right? Do you work with rescue dogs? Are dogs frightened of dogs, people? Yeah, dogs are dogs. We work with all kinds of dogs. You know, one of the big things that we see with rescue dogs is they're all puppies once. I think that's really, really important to remember. But rescue dogs often in the first 3 months get asked a lot of them that they're frankly not ready for. You know, the circumstances they've come from are normally quite traumatic, even if they just had no obvious major trauma. Just going through constant change is exhausting. So don't ask much of them. And again, it's a case of recognizing the earliest point that can help them. The earliest point that they start showing indications of stress, and helping them from there rather than taking them in the deep end. Every single dog's helpable. You've just got to recognize like at what point do they get stressed, and try and keep them under threshold and build positive associations. And your goals have to be in line with what the dog's. Every dog's got a limitation as well. You know, they might never be the dog that runs around the park with other dogs, but that's not the dog's agenda. The dog's agenda was just to live a happy, stress-free life. And so we should make sure that we allow them to live a life that has that, rather than putting goals on them. What if you're walking 2 dogs at once? It's harder. Frankly, it's harder. So a big reason is your concentration split. So actually putting yourself in situations where there's more distraction is going to set you up to fail much easier. But also from the dog's perspective, and this is the same when there's more than one person walking a dog, and you know, think of it as well, like if you're walking the kids, your dog's going to check in with whoever it's familiar with all the time for feedback in its environment. So he'll be walking along and he'll check in with you. And if there's one of you, he'll check in and go, got it, carry on with my day. If there's a second dog or a second person, God forbid kids on scooters whipping around, it's harder for the dog. He'll go, got it, oh, where are you? Got it, where are you? Yep. And all of a sudden, it's taking him 3 seconds instead of half a second to gather his senses. And then he's got to scan the world and process all that information. So when you've got more than one dog at once, I guess just don't expect them to be able to do what they can do with it when it's just the one of them. Build that up really gradually, and that's why we try and build up the same consistent coping mechanism, which is when there's something in the environment, look back at me, because that puts me back in control, so I can then make a decision. Hopefully that helps. Sorry I couldn't let you on the chat, I tried. Hello, I just adopted a 1-year lab. She doesn't really respond to me when I take her for a walk. How can I build that relationship with her? Thank you in advance. Very welcome. Start communicating with her early, really, really early on in the walk. If your dog can take food in one environment, but not another, it's not that she doesn't like the food. It's that she can't take the food in that environment. So for example, if you offer chicken at the front door and she can take it there, but you open the front door, she's telling you that front door is too gripping. So don't go through it, desensitize at that point, and keep tracking back as far as you need to. Go back to where she can take chicken and notice where she can't, and then find a middle ground to start desensitizing at that point. Is it better to walk my 2 dogs separately if one is anxious? Potentially. Hey, nice to see you. It's probably, knowing your situation, yeah, definitely. One of the dogs is really, it needs a lot of care in that situation. When we've got an anxious dog out on the walk, really needs a lot of care in that situation. So giving them your undivided attention is going to be pretty essential. Plus, living with an anxious dog for anyone is hard work. The dog that isn't anxious deserves a break and can just really benefit from just going out, having a break, having a breather. And if they love the walk, then that really is something relaxing away from somebody they probably love. But being surrounded by anybody 24 hours a day is a punish. So yeah, just having that break is probably really important. Hey Ian, what's your take on the role diet plays with behavior? Look, I'm not going to cover that today. It's massive, absolutely massive. We're talking about leash walking today, but I will be happy to talk about that. I'm also not the expert, to be honest. What I do know is that, speaking to vets, is that the microbiome in the gut plays a massive part in the brain and the gut health. So getting gut health right is something we really encourage our clients to do, because it will impact their behavior. But I'm going to leave that there for today, just different topic. But thanks for your question. Any other question? I'm going to stay online for another couple of minutes until we see if these questions come through. But if not, it really has been a pleasure. I'm going to try and do these weekly. I took a couple of notes, but as always, I'm kind of just winging this, so it's a bit of fun. And we're going to try, like I said, I'm going to film this. This is being recorded, so give us a couple of days and we'll post the recording. We've got a new Bondi Behaviorist community group on Facebook. It's called the Bondi Behaviorist Bubble, and it's there just for people to talk, dog chat, and things like that. Oh, what's another question? What are your thoughts on taking an anxious dog on the same route each day? When I vary the walk, my pup starts to pull a lot. Yeah. There's pros and cons. If the route is stress-free, so it's walking around and it's genuinely a good route, you can use that as a kind of baseline. So you take it around the block and it has a good walk and a good experience. When you're trying to expand on what it can cope with, that's where we become a training issue, and we go right, okay, we're going to introduce this and then pull it back to make sure and pair it with something positive. So that's where we've tried and figure out maybe like what are the novel things that actually make the dog anxious, and that could be anything. It could be a visual stimulus, it could be a noise stimulus like a car. So you actually try and introduce them gradually and systematically to get them desensitized and kind of conditioned. But your dog's like, I'm not going to repeat it because just rehashing it, but like have a listen to what we said earlier about like what causes the dog to pull. You're looking at a physical response to the stimulus in its environment, hence why we go down that kind of conditioning route. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for your time. This was meant to be a 10-minute video. I think it's lasted half an hour. Brilliant. All right, have a great day, and hopefully I will see you next week. See ya.